Hi, Jen.
Hi, Zanna.
Hi, everybody. We're the Cup and Saucy Book Club.
What did I assign you to read this month, Zanna?
Last time you gave me the book Would You Be Mine by Daphne Elliot.
And this was narrated in dual narration by a friend of the show, Lucy Rivers, and Stephen Borne. So what did you think?
What I liked about it is I liked the attraction between the two. I felt like it was a sort of a natural attraction. It made sense, that it's a grumpy sunshine kind of book. It's not a grumpy kicked puppy kind of book at all. It's,
No.
So it is definitely grumpy sunshine. I guess I don't super love Grumpy Sunshine, although one of my very favorite books of all time is A Grumpy Sunshine. Pride and Prejudice is really a Grumpy Sunshine.
It is very much a Grumpy Sunshine.
Boil it down. But I thought the attraction was natural. So it's a small town romance as well, and so the main male character is owns a lumber company.
Yep.
And Henry, and then the female main character Alice has just recently moved to town, and she is the new principal of the local school. This town is in Maine, and it's fallen upon hard times.
Yeah.
There was a paper mill that closed down, and there's been sort of a rampant drug problem throughout the region. And so, I thought that the characters were fun. She's very much a sunshine, and just trying to make the world a better place. And he's grumpy, but he's like immediately attracted to her, and he finds her wonderful and great and everything like that. And I thought the attraction made sense, and I was good with it. There's also an element of found family, which is something I enjoy. I like, families that are built out of love and not necessarily out of blood. And also there's a mystery element to it. And so I really did enjoy the mystery.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
And I did sort of lead you on with this because this book is part of a series. And so the mystery kind of continues throughout the series. And
right.
Yeah.
And that's where I have the what I didn't like as much. So what I didn't like is that the mystery isn't solved.
Yeah.
I have my theories about who is the secret antagonist of this, and but now I'm gonna have to read the rest of the books in order to find out what happens. Anyway, I didn't love Henry's sort of overbearing attitude.
Yeah.
I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum, but that kind of guy, not my yum.
The alphas are not for you, huh?
I don't. He's definitely alpha.
Yeah.
And he's sort of bossy, and she loves it, even though she hates it at first. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not really into that. But it's cool if you're into it.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So,
we're still finding your sweet spot. So
right.
Okay.
Right. That's not it, but he's not like that all the time, right? So it's mostly when he feels like she's in danger.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe he feels like she's in danger a whole lot more than she actually is. And so
well, and to sort of be Henry's advocate here, he does come from a place where he sees danger kind of all around him. His father died under mysterious circumstances, leaving him the family business, and his and he's the oldest of 4 siblings, and so he's got to take care and make sure his people are taken care of, and make sure his family is taken care of. And once Alice becomes his people, then she comes under that protective umbrella. And
whether she wants to be
or not, and she can stand on her own. She can, she's not weak in any way.
No.
She's out of her element, certainly.
Sure. But she's adaptable.
Yeah,
she's able to adapt pretty easily.
and
Um,
she's very smart, and she
mhm.
listens to people, which makes her,
Right.
you know, in a
That's sort of her
yeah,
superpower, is that she really listens, and she really cares. And so she comes to very, even though she's sort of seen as an outsider at first, she comes to be beloved by the community because she actually loves the community,
yeah,
and because she actually listens to them, and she's so they've had this long history in the town of people with a savior
right,
complex, and that's not really what she's about. She's more about, just listening and trying to do what she can based on her
yeah,
skills.
and one of the things that separates her from the previous, savior complex folks who have come in, is that in listening she finds out what everyone around her, what their strengths are. And
Right.
so I think that helps her to say, to ask for help from the right people when she needs it for a specific thing.
Right, right. So instead of coming in and saying you're doing it wrong, this is, your ideas of how to run this town are wrong. I'm from the city, and this is how you should do it.
Yeah,
Instead of that, she pays attention and sees where maybe they're not seeing some connections that could be made. She's
right.
seeing those connections.
Which,
It is she still does have a little bit of a savior
a little
complex,
bit,
but
but yeah,
it's not about her.
yeah,
It's about, the end result. So, I like Alice. She's good people. Um what I didn't like as much, like I said, the mystery isn't solved, the overbearing attitude. The pacing to me was a little bit off. It started slow,
mm-hmm,
and then, like, at the end, everything sort of felt rushed.
mm,
And, like, they were trying to cram a whole bunch of stuff into a small amount of time. And so, you know, I think that it made sense, and especially since this is a series, they were trying to get to some resolutions and trying to get to the happily ever after for
yeah,
Henry and Alice, and
and also
so,
set up for the next book too.
set up for the next book.
Yeah,
And I feel like that probably could have been spread out a little bit more, but overall I think it was pretty well done. Cup level, I would say. So, because it wasn't super my
yeah,
thing, I'm probably going to go 3.5.
okay,
I mean, I liked it a lot, and I think if bossy lumberjacks are your thing, you'll probably really, really like it. Bossy lumberjacks are not really my thing, and if they were my thing, I would probably go with a 4.
okay.
But
And
the
this
the 3.5 is mostly my personal preference stuff.
and the saucy level.
The saucy level, okay, so I counted. There are 4 pretty steamy sex scenes in the book, starting at around chapter 22. I give it a 4 because I think that the sex is pretty
Yeah.
steamy, and then there's also a lot of pretty steamy flirting that
Oh
happens
yeah.
before.
Ahead of
Yeah.
chapter
Yeah, so
22.
before ahead of chapter 22, there's still quite a bit of flirting. There's, some uh yeah, they're clearly into each other.
Yeah.
And they're clearly, there's a number of points where you're like, this is it. This is going to be where they do it, and, not yet.
Okay, so
So,
I have read this entire series. Zanna has not.
okay.
And I have eyeball read the entire series because the audiobooks are still being produced.
Mhm.
And so I know how who it is and how the mystery is solved and all of that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
Which, when we talked to Lucy Rivers, I had to keep that under wraps too because
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
she hadn't read it yet
Yeah.
either.
Right, right.
So, um, but then I also developed my own theory about
Clive the
the Clive
Moose.
the Moose, that he is a
Right.
shifter. And I still hold to this, even though from the first book,
I, you know,
you
I
don't.
don't I don't I don't see
Yeah.
it in this book. There is a very funny scene, very much at the beginning of the book, where Alice encounters Clive the moose, and she tries to defend herself with a box of
Yeah.
tampons. And turns out tampons don't make very good missile projectile weapons.
Yeah,
Which anybody
and
who's ever
doesn't bother
ever
Clive
held it,
at all.
not at all. Mooses,
Mooses.
mooses,
Moose.
mooses are very. They're very big.
Yeah.
They're very,
But-
very
but-
big.
Particularly with Clive, and this is what starts
Yeah.
my theory, is that he's
Uh-huh.
really old for a moose, and
Okay.
and he's bigger.
What is the lifespan of a moose?
I have no idea, but they keep saying
Uh-huh.
that throughout the book, is that he's like really old for a
Okay.
moose. So this is
So maybe he's not a moose shifter, but like a moose god.
oh, huh. I kind of like that actually. I like okay, all right. Now I'm gonna have to go. Now I'm gonna have to go
Because
back
I
through the
don't-
rest
I
of the
don't see-
series and like
So far,
Figure out if that
I don't
fits.
see him as being like particularly humanoid, but I do see him as being very old and tired, but not super tired. Like he's set in his ways, and
Yeah.
he's not afraid of anything.
yeah.
And so that gives off sort of moose god energy more than moose shifter energy to me.
Well, in the second book, it's a little more of he shows up at inopportune times as almost like he
Uh-huh.
knows. So this
That still lends itself to moose god to me.
well, he could still be a moose shifter and just a voyeur moose shifter. Who knows?
He could be, but what's his goal then? I mean, if he's a moose shifter, what's his?
I don't.
What's his
I
shtick?
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
this is just a wild theory I have, and
I got you.
And
Well, I'm not on board with the moose shifter. But
Okay.
I'm going to propose my own.
I
I'm
can
gonna
I can
propose my
stand
own moose
all I
god.
can stand all by myself on this
So-
hill. It's fine.
So this is way tangent, but when I was a little girl, I went with my neighbors to a Baha'i Sunday school kind of, or Baha'i children's group thing, and somehow I came away with the idea that God was a black moose, and
Okay.
I was probably about 5 or 6 at the time. Upon further research throughout my life, I think maybe what I was misunderstanding was that the Baha'i faith was started by black Muslims. And, but I had sort of organized this whole idea in my head, understand that I was not brought up religious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you have
in a
you have
religious
no
household.
centering
Yeah,
in there.
so, but I went to a lot of different types of religious establishments, including this Baha'i faith center. And so I'd kind of created this mythology in my head with God as a black moose. And then they're like, angels were like Canadian Mounties. And so I'm already predisposed to believe in moose gods from a very early age.
If you had told me, I have never heard this before. We have known each other almost a decade, and yet I have never.
Well, my college boyfriend, I had heard this story, and he was taking a comparative religion class. And so there was a Baha'i faith leader who came to the comparative religion class. And so he asked that question. He's like, my girlfriend, went to a Baha'i children's group as a child and came away with this idea. And the guy was like,
What?
I have no idea what you're
what?
talking about. So to clarify, the Baha'i faith does not worship.
Yes,
Moose.
we are making no
Or
statements
mooses.
on
No, no.
that at all.
This is my own crazy brain from
from childhood, yeah, and child logic operates under its
Yeah.
own rules. So
It does, and words that sound similar
yeah,
get
anybody
transposed.
who has kids or has been around kids knows how child logic is just its
Right.
own
I mean,
thing.
like when my son was younger, he used to ask to go to the Chinese buffalo. It was the buffet.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah. So
words that sound similar.
words that
Anyway,
sound similar.
that's enough of a tangent.
That's enough of a tangent, certainly. So we're so now for your next book.
Okay.
This time I am giving you a choice of narration type.
So I guess I'm going to be listening.
Yeah. This is gonna
Okay.
be a listen. So your
Okay.
choices are solo narration,
Okay.
dual narration, or duet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not all the choices because
Okay.
I could have put in multicast, but I'm leaving
Right,
that out.
right.
So
Okay. I think I'm going to go with solo narration. I haven't listened to a solo narrated book in a long time.
okay, so this pick is going to be pretty short. It's actually only a couple of
Okay.
hours, and your for next month, Zanna will be listening to My Story of Us, Grayson, by Chris Brinkley, and it is also
Okay.
narrated, solo narration by Chris Brinkley. And when we had him on the show, we talked about this, and this is part of
Yeah.
his series of books that are written to as
Your second
second person
narration.
sort of POV. You know, you're he's talking
Gotcha.
to you, the listener. So
Mhm.
it's and so I would also recommend for anybody watching, for our listeners, that you read the rest of this series. There is mention of the previous books because this is the third. This is the third book, but for the context of books that I choose for Zanna, this one was the most appropriate. The other two, I know she would have had issues with. So join us next month for My Story of Us, Grayson, by Chris Brinkley and narrated by Chris Brinkley. And the episode will be available on YouTube and on TikTok on Wednesday, September 18th. And thank you so much for joining us on the Cup and Saucy Book Club.
And join us on Monday for our chat with another great guest on the Cup and Saucy Book Club podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on @Cup and Saucy Books on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.